In this video, we're going to show you how to remove and replace the passenger side front axle for a 14 Jeep Compass. Remove the tire, 19mm socket. So we're going to have to remove the undercarriage skirting, and I'm going to start inside this fender well. I just have some body tools. We're going to move this plastic clip. There's two of them on the inside fender well. Pull the center piece out. Do the same for the top, front. Now we're going to raise the vehicle up and take the bolts off. So there's 7 bolts going around holding this skirting under. 10mm socket. We're going to take all of them out. Now I'm just going to let it hang. I'm going to leave the clips in the driver's side fender well attached because I just need access to the inner CV boot. In order to get this axle out, we need to be able to push this knuckle outward. So first thing what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the control arm ball joint down. So I'm going to take this pinch bolt out. You can use the upper strut, but if you do the upper strut, you must get in alignment after. It's always a good idea to get in alignment anyways, but that's a guarantee you need to. This is, you can put it off for a little bit. Pinch bolt on this particular model is a 15mm on the bolt head and an 18mm on the nut. Now with a long pry bar, because I don't want to damage that boot. Looks like it's been replaced recently. So I'm going to pry down on the control arm going into the knuckle. Being careful not to pinch that boot. So now I brought it down to an area so I can get better leverage, and it's pretty loose, so I just really need to slide a bar in there and push against that sway bar, see if I can pop it out the rest of the way. There we go. And you can see that this axle nut looks pretty rusty, so we're going to spray it down. Let that soak for a little bit. We'll remove that cotter pin and take that spring cap off. Pair of cutters, I'm just going to see if I can fold this over. Hope that it doesn't break fresh in there. It's not a big deal if it does. We'll figure it out. See if I can get any grip on that. That's pretty bad, so good thing is you always replace them with new ones, and the axle does come with a new one. And it also comes with a new axle nut. Just try to cut it down as close as possible. So that castle nut cover was pretty wasted. It was kind of demolished in my hands here. So I'm going to take this spring clip off. I have to take that off though in order to get the socket on. So this nut is pretty rusted. I can tell you the new one is a 32mm socket. This one is a 34 because of the rust. So if yours is not rusted, it's probably going to be a 32. .32 fits now. There we go. Now with a little magnet, I'm just going to grab that washer. We're going to try to get this axle out. I think we're going to end up using an air gun with a chisel on it. Punch it right through. That's what those little indents are for that come on axles. So you don't use a flat head chisel like a hammer style because you'll peen over the threads. That little dimple is exactly for that. You put a chisel in there and push. So I'm going to grab that rotor and I'm going to pull out while I push this in. Grabbing the caliper side, let's see if we can get this out the rest of the way from this knuckle. going to bring it up so that I can get to the other side, inner boot side, where it goes into the transfer case. So I put a catch pan underneath, just in case I lose any gear fluid or training fluid, shall I say, and just don't want to make a mess. And I usually use a big pry bar, and I try to get in there, don't damage that seal. Now this is going to have a long inner shaft on that, so once it breaks free from the clip, you're going to have to grab it with both hands and slide it, guide it out so you don't destroy that seal. So I have also, if you can't get a pry bar in there, I do have this kit, and it's actually a CV axle kit. So the way it works is you have something and you wedge it and it pops through. It's almost like a pickle fork. Let's give it a shot. There you go. I'll get a hammer. See how it popped it right out? Just like that. Before we install the new axle, I always like to take the new axle nut off in the washer. We'll set that aside. And that way we can pop it right into that hub if we get a chance. So you're going to bring the female end in. There's already a lock clip on that output shaft. Line it up. Hold this knuckle out of the way. Line it up and give it a push. There it is. Slid right in. Let's take a look. Make sure it's flush. Yeah. So now we can take our out part spindle, put it right through the knuckle. There we go. Undo my bungee cord here. So I raised it up a little bit so we could get a good vision of this and how we're going to make sure that goes right back into that knuckle. And then just grab this, wiggle it back and forth, and you'll see it, that goes straight up. You're going to look for that spline to make sure that bolt, pinch bolt, can slide right in. And if it doesn't, then we'll just give it a wiggle. You can always take a rubber mallet, give it a little tap until that slides in. So the pinch bolt for the ball joint is a 15mm socket on this side and 18mm on this side. We're going to torque it to the factory spec, which is 60 foot-pounds. So now I'm going to put the undercarriage splash guard back up. So I like to bring it back up into the fender well. Make sure it's all the way up there. I'm going to put the front bolts in. Not going to tighten. I just want to put them in place. Then I'll snug them all up. There's 7 of them. All right, snug them up. Now I'm going to go in the fender well, put these plastic clips back in. Now I can put on the axle nut. Got a new washer and the new axle spindle nut. We're going to torque that to factory specs. It's really important that you tighten it to the specs. If you over tighten it with a 1/2-inch air gun or under tighten it, the bearing will separate and then you'll have a dangerous, unsafe situation. So there's a lot of ways to tighten axle nuts or spindle nuts. I like to use my long pry bar, and I'm going to wedge it right in the lug nuts and put it against the way that I'm going. Now I get my 1/2-inch torque wrench, with my 32mm socket. And I'll bring it around. Once it bottoms out, I'm going to torque it to the 180 foot-pounds. Now, if your spring and castle nut cover is still intact, please use that. Ours is disintegrated, so I'm going to put in the cotter pin. Make sure you get the right diameter. Pull it up. Now we can put the wheel on. Stop lug nuts by hand. You don't have to go all the way down. And we're going to torque this to the factory spec also, which is 100 foot-pounds. 19mm socket. Always go in a star pattern. And then double check. When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.